Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. The Fender Custom Shop came out with something truly fascinating a couple of weeks ago, and I'm on the fence if I should buy one of these for full review and documentation or not, so I thought I'd feel you guys out with this Would You Rock or Not episode. That's my sneaky way of saying if anybody wants to new guitar day purchase this, let's do it. Okay, so this is called the limited edition Violinmaster Telecaster. That is a Relic job produced by the great Yuriy Shishkov of the Fender Master Builders. Okay, so first glance here, it's a Telecaster that looks like a violin. Cool. But my friends, it is much, much more than that. This is an homage to the great builder, Antonio Stradivari. But this just isn't any tribute to a Stradivarius. This was actually created based off of scans of an original owned by Joshua Bell. This one is known as the Gibson-Huberman Stradivarius violin, built by Stradivari in 1713. So Joshua Bell, you can see him right here, he's a Grammy award-winning violinist, and he also happens to be pretty much the richest violinist in the world. I found it funny when I was looking up the value of Stradivariuses. You see 16 million here. Granted, again, that was at a charity auction. But then you see this suggested question, who is the richest violinist? Oh, it's that guy, worth $15 million. His entire net worth is tied up in that violin. I can appreciate that. I kid. Maybe just a quarter of his net worth. But what makes this particular Stradivari kind of interesting is it was stolen not once, but twice and then recovered. The first time was in 1919 in Vienna, while the owner was eating some sausages. Then it was recovered and then stolen again in 1936 in New York, taken from Huberman's dressing room during a performance at Carnegie Hall. And unfortunately, he never saw it ever again. Until 1985, when the thief, on his deathbed, as a violin player himself, admitted that he used shoe polish to disguise the stolen instrument so he could have it for 50 years. So after 9 months, some guy restored it, it was sold to a British violinist, and then in 2001, Joshua Bell gets it. So in 2020, Yuriy got to take scans and look at that violin and then scale it up into a guitar to make this tribute. So it's kind of a replica, but transformed into something else. I mean, it's interesting, I'll give him that. I've always wanted to see a guitar like a violin, and I'm sure this isn't the first time it's ever been done. But this is the first time that they took it to the extreme to build it just like a Stradivarius. So before we dive too far deep into this violin Telecaster, let's learn a little bit about Stradivarius violins, just in case you're not familiar. To put this into guitar terms, think the 1959 Gibson Les Paul Sunburst. This is the holy grail of electric guitars. Now sure, there's really high-end Fender models as well, and many have masterfully produced guitars at the very beginning of rock and roll, but the Stradivarius violins are kind of like these, but for the classical music realm. To draw a basic similarity here so you guys can understand it a bit better, I mean, this burst is $375,000. To the guys that own Strads, that's like a drop in the bucket. That's what they spend on lunch. Because in charity auctions, these things have sold for as much as $16 million. Now generally, according to a guy in a Vox video about Stradivarius violins, he was saying the one that he had was worth about $4 million. Needless to say, these are very expensive creations. And Antonio made more than just violins. He also had cellos, harps, even guitars. And of his 1,100 creations, only about 650 of them have survived the time, and there's currently about 2,000 of them in the world. I'm sure there's a bunch of fakes and counterfeits and other things, but I would love to own a Strad one day, just because, you know, violin was my first instrument. But here's a couple of them that are at the Met Museum. There's one of his cellos and a couple of the violins. I'm not sure if one of these is a viola or not. I can't quite tell if it's not side by side next to another violin. But I found the one that I want to own one day, this thing. I've never seen a violin have a bound fingerboard. And that's not binding, that appears to actually be another wooden layer around the ebony fingerboard. Same thing on the tailpiece of it, that is such a cool piece. But anyways, now we can move back to this Telecaster creation. So basically what happened is Yuriy wanted to create a guitar that could pay homage to this great builder of these fantastic instruments. Not that there's not great violins made yet today, it's just the heritage, the importance of these instruments, and how often they've been used throughout time. So, due to a storm knocking down some sacred trees in Stradivari Alley, there was wood made available to the public to purchase. There was spruce wood that's the exact same type that was used on these Stradivari violins. So Fender bought it up, and Mr. Shishkov here, he's all like, yes, let's pay tribute and do it like that. So this Telecaster actually has a spruce top to it. It looks like a violin because it's made out of the same stuff as a violin. Now obviously violins don't have pickups and they don't have knobs on them and selector switches and strap buttons. They had to take some artistic liberties to keep this guitar a guitar, but it's got that worn in vintage antique finish. It's got the double lines running all along the body with that less stained area kind of looking like the edge of a violin. I am a bit sad to see that the Telecaster doesn't protrude out on the edges like a real violin does, just a little bit, but it appears this comes to a smooth edge. But now let's talk pickups. We've got TV Jones Thunderblade pickups, both in the neck and bridge, but we also have a piezo system within this, so you can get some electrified acoustic tones out of this. Which, you know, with being a violin, it's kind of a good idea. Now, they could have went as far as, like, not having real magnetic pickups in here just to make it look a little bit more traditional, because they've already got that kind of extended bridge system. Like, a violin bridge looks like this, whereas, you know, a guitar bridge has to look like this because you have more strings and you need a more secure system. So that's close enough, but then they've got that kind of violin stylized tailpiece down here. And they're actually giving you multiple different saddles, so you can kind of help shape your tone like that. All in their own custom violin flame maple case here. The one that's currently on the guitar is made of brass, but you also have a few different wooden options you can choose as well. Next up here, it looks like they made the pickup rings out of wood, including the knobs, maybe even the toggle switch. It's kind of hard to see. And then clearly we have the F-holes just like on a violin, scaled up to the exact size. So that pretty much covers the top. Now we need to flip over to the backside. As is traditional, we have maple on the back sides and on the neck. So it sounds to me that they actually start this off as a maple body and then they just chamber it out, kind of like what they do with their thin line Telecasters, but a little bit more extreme. But you can see here the flame maple figuring that's on this, and the wear and tear is meant to resemble Josh's violin. But they still decided to do a bolt-on neck. I get it. I think it would have been really cool if they could have did the set neck Telecaster. Like, those things do exist, but they wouldn't be able to do those same lines, I don't think. So that's probably why they decided to leave it like this. It would have been cool if they could have made like a spruce topper over that backplate to kind of blend it in or paint it or something. That would have been kind of cool. But now we move on to the neck. So kind of like how the violins have the brown top of the headstock with the scroll and whatnot, and at the base of the heel, before they just kind of have a bare look. Yuriy tried to make this look exactly like that, but this is extra special flame maple. Just like the top had some special woods, they sourced some Bosnian flame maple for this stuff. They gave it the oval C-shaped neck profile. It still has the 25.5-inch scale length with a 9.5-inch radius, 22 medium jumbo frets, a graphite nut, and of course the fretboard is ebony. They're using all nitro lacquer on this. But now we need to look at the headstock. Alright, so they gave it that brown tint to it, and I love the tuners that they chose on this thing. So violin tuners, they look like this. And this one, they try to emulate that with these ebony tuner tips. Now, if you've ever tried to tune a violin, tuning a guitar is a lot easier, so it's nice that we have this style and they didn't go too crazy on us. But Taylor uses those types of tuners on their high-end guitars, so I already know how those things will feel. They'll feel flawless. But I can't help but really wish they would have did the violin scroll on the headstock. Like maybe even just do a slight relief carving. Even if they had to glue another block of wood on here and then do that. That would have been a really nice touch. Or even if they could have just like maybe engraved it into the guitar to make it look like it has that scroll. I mean, heck, if Epiphone can do it on the Epiphone scroll, surely Fender Masterbuilders could have done the same. And then maybe we could have just left off the Fender decal on the headstock and just went old school style and like put it inside the F-hole or something, like many violins will. So it's kind of an interesting piece. It's got so much going on for it, but at the same time, I feel like it could have been dialed in a little bit better to get more violin attributes. Like we talked about the bolt-on neck and some things with the headstock and the electronics. I mean, those are things you just have to make artistic liberties of. But the one thing that I think they really should have done is no fret markers on this thing, because you're trying to do everything else violin. Violins don't have fret markers. I mean, I guess we could have went as far as violins don't have frets either. Maybe they could have found like a black fret material though. That would have been kind of interesting. Or made this a fretless guitar. I mean, those things do exist. There's guitar videos if you want to check out people playing fretlesses. But generally, most guitar players prefer frets. So maybe we could have just left the frets but not have the markers. I don't know. It's just some fun things I was thinking of how they could have taken this guitar to a different level. But speaking of taking this guitar places, look at that case. Okay, so apparently these processes of applying the finishes take months to do correctly. And some of them are very time specific, like you have to do it at this hour or it will just not look right. So all these guitars that they're making, they're very limited in production. They're going to take a long time. So of course they're going to give you this big hefty duty case that will not break the guitar, no matter what UPS or FedEx does to it. And as we were saying earlier, you get those extra bridges in the wood that was actually carved out from the guitar itself, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to repurpose some of that beautiful wood. And I'm guessing that'll be within your compartment right here. But you can see your butterfly latches, your big heavy duty case. This thing is so heavy, it has wheels on it. Like that's a $800 flight case right there, my friends. And to make matters even crazier, the outside of the case is branded Fender. It has wooden exterior. I don't know if that's such a good idea, because what if the case gets damaged, the wood gets cracked? It's like those old Moto cases, the mother of toilet seat Stratocasters, the mother of pearl-like material, where they had a fancy case like that, but sometimes that Moto will shrink and it just looks garbage over time. This one being wood, yeah, it could still shrink, but I'm more so worried that it would get cracked. And then you've got a damaged case when it was trying to protect your guitar. It's kind of an interesting conundrum there. That'll get all scratched up if you try to use this flight case as a flight case. So a fancy flight case that you can't use exactly the way it was intended. Well, at least it would look nice in a display, right? Which honestly is probably where most of these things will end up. So now you're probably wondering, okay, this all sounds great. I want to do that new Guitar Day purchase with you to get one of these on the show. How much is it going to cost me? When these things were first announced, I couldn't find the price. No dealers had them. As far as I know, we just now have the official prototype to base all the other ones off of completed. So it's going to take a long time for these things to even come in stock. But I was thinking, maybe $20,000 for this was my guess. So I just had to wait a couple of weeks until these things finally started to show up. And everything is just a pre-order at this point, but they are a whopping $30,000. So let's think about that price. Justify the exotic woods that are period specific for a Stradivari violin. Also have to remember this is a Masterbuilt Fender Telecaster, and Yuriy Shishkov is a very talented guy. It's a very time-consuming process to make the guitar the way that they're doing it with the finish. It is a work of art as much as it is a playable instrument. And it might not look so impressive in some photo angles, but this one, with the case, I can tell that finish is gonna look fantastic in person. It's got that beautiful ambered over hue. Sometimes it can look a little bit sun bleached out, and some stock photos like this really help show you the light nicks and dings in the top. And I'm sure there's some elements of this guitar that we're just not appreciating because we just don't know at this point in time. We've got very limited press photos and stock photos to go off of right now. So yeah, that's the price. How many are they making? Up to 60. So I think what they're doing here is they gave all of their high-end dealers the opportunity to sell one. They would list them on Reverb as a pre-order. They would put them on their website as a pre-order. And anybody who happens to get that order through for $30,000, they'll make one, they'll send it out to you. And there's only so many Fender custom shop dealers. I'm surprised. We only have 3 left. I think the first time I checked a couple of weeks ago, there was a good handful of these. But unfortunately, the usual dealers that I work with, they've already sold out their allotment. And if I wanted to purchase this just on my own, hoping that it would go up in value or I could find a buyer for it afterwards, I'm not sure if I would be able to get out of it, 30,000's a lot. Take a look at the Rocky Stratocaster. I just sold that this week, and those things were brand new, $25,000. A super heavily iconic guitar within rock and roll history. And that guitar did not fly off the shelf. But now that they're starting to all disappear from the market is when, the prices are going to start to go up. It's a calculated risk. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not. But the other thing is, will people just lose interest in these things? Who knows when you'll actually get this? It could be years down the line. This says June of 2022. So only time will tell if we'll actually see one of these on the show. I would love to document it. It looks like fun. But Fender's video, you can check it out right here, actually does have a playing segment already. It sounds fantastic. Now, granted, you have one of their Fender Play guitar teachers playing it, and they've really dialed in the tones on the select amps that they have, but it sounds like no other Telecaster I've heard before. Let's go ahead and listen to a few brief snippets. But one last topic to talk about for today is I think this was a big, huge missed opportunity. So Stradivarius Telecaster called the Violinmaster. I'm kind of with most people in saying Violinmaster I get it. It's the master of the violins. They've got the Telecaster, but master is more like from jazz master, so that doesn't make sense. But it's a huge, big missed opportunity for Strat-ivarius. This should have been a Stratocaster. I get it. Violins look a little bit more so like a Telecaster, despite not having a cutaway. Like, wouldn't that have been cool if they would have just did a non-cutaway Telecaster, just like butterfly the upper bout? That would have made it really cool and special. But if they would have made this the Strat-ivarius, I would have put my $30,000 down just for the pun. Hopefully, maybe they'll do that in the future because it's just too beautiful not to. And that's coming from a guy who prefers the Telecaster body shape over the Stratocaster. That would have just been so funny. But I think the Stratocaster would really pull off that extended edge that I was talking about earlier. So who knows? Maybe Yuriy will do that in the future after they sell as many of these as they can. But the only question left I have for you guys today is, would you rock or not the Violinmaster Telecaster Relic? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with a friend who you think would enjoy it, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.